From a comedian who auditioned by sitting on his head to a spacesuit recycled from Star Trek, the making of Mork Mindy was almost as bizarre as the alien antics on screen. Robin Williams literally got the role by sitting upside down in his chair during auditions, while the show's most iconic costume was secretly borrowed from another sci-fi series. Behind the rainbow suspenders and Nanu Nanu catchphrases lay production secrets that would make even an Orkan blush. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Mork Mindy, 1978. Fact 1. Robin Williams auditioned upside down. Most actors try to impress casting directors with their best monologue or a well-rehearsed scene, but Robin Williams took a completely different approach when he walked into producer Gary Marshall's office in 1978. Williams had been recommended for the role of Mork after being discovered in an acting class he was taking alongside Marshall's sister, Penny Marshall, who would later become famous for her role in Laverne and Shirley. At the time, Williams was largely unknown and had been earning a living by performing comedy on street corners, literally passing a hat around for tips from passers-by. When Marshall first heard about this street performer potentially being the lead of a television show, he thought the idea was completely ridiculous. However, someone told him that the tip hat Williams collected was a very full hat, which suggested the young comedian might actually have some real talent worth investigating. Marshall decided to give Williams a chance and scheduled a meeting at his office. What happened next became one of the most legendary audition stories in television history. When Williams arrived at Marshall's office, the producer found him sitting on the couch completely upside down, balanced on his head. When Williams saw Marshall enter the room, he immediately stood straight up and began pretending to drink a glass of water, using just his finger, creating an absurd pantomime performance right there in the office. This bizarre behavior wasn't just random weirdness on Williams' part. When Marshall later asked him to take a seat during the formal audition process, Williams once again sat in the chair upside down on his head, demonstrating the same alien-like behavior he would eventually bring to the character of Mork. Marshall was so impressed by Williams's commitment to this otherworldly persona that he cast him on the spot. Marshall later explained his decision with perfect logic, saying that Williams was the only alien to audition. The producer recognized that Williams wasn't just acting strange for attention, but was genuinely embodying the mindset of an extraterrestrial being who wouldn't understand normal human customs like sitting properly in a chair. This instinctive understanding of the character's alien perspective convinced Marshall that Williams was perfect for the role, launching the comedian's career into television stardom. Fact 2. Pam Dawber never actually auditioned. While most television stars land their breakthrough roles through traditional auditions and callbacks, Pam Dawber's path to becoming Mindy McConnell happened in one of the most unusual ways in television history. Dawber never auditioned for the role of Mindy, never read for the part, and never even knew she was being considered for Mork and Mindy until after she had already been cast. At the time, Dawber was under a development deal with ABC, which gave the network the right to place her in any project they thought would be a good fit. Her resume at that point consisted mainly of modeling work and commercial appearances, along with one feature film called The Wedding from 1978. Most importantly for her future, she had recently starred in a failed television pilot called Sister Terry, which never made it to series but had caught the attention of producer Gary Marshall. When Marshall needed to find the perfect actress to play opposite Robin Williams in his new alien comedy, he remembered Dawber's performance in that unsuccessful pilot. Rather than bringing her in for traditional auditions, Marshall came up with an ingenious and completely unconventional approach to convince the network executives that she was right for the part. Marshall took clips from Dawber's work in Sister Terry and cleverly edited them together with footage of Robin Williams performing as Mork from his guest appearance on Happy Days. By combining these two separate performances, he created a fake audition tape that showed how the two actors would work together on screen, even though they had never actually met or performed together at that point. The network executives loved what they saw in Marshall's edited presentation and immediately greenlit the series with both Williams and Dawber as the leads. The first time Dauber learned she had been cast as Mindy was when she opened up a copy of Variety, the entertainment industry trade publication, and read about her new job in the pages of the magazine. This unusual casting process meant that Dauber had no idea what she was getting herself into when she signed on to work with Williams, who was known for his unpredictable and energetic improvisational style that would later make the show famous. Fact 3. Mork's spacesuit was recycled from Star Trek. The bright red spacesuit that became Mork's signature look wasn't actually designed specifically for the character at all, but was instead borrowed from the wardrobe collection of another famous science fiction series. When the production team needed to create Mork's alien costume for his debut appearance on Happy Days in 1978, they didn't have much time or budget to work with, so someone simply grabbed a red jumpsuit from Paramount's existing wardrobe department and added a silver triangle to make it look more futuristic. What most viewers never realized was that this iconic costume had already appeared on television screens nearly a decade earlier in a 1969 episode of Star Trek called The Savage Curtain. In that episode, the same red jumpsuit was worn by a character named Colonel Green, who was portrayed as one of history's most evil military leaders from Earth's past. The costume designers for Mork and Mindy probably never expected anyone to notice this connection, especially since Star Trek had been off the air for several years by the time Mork made his television debut. This wasn't the only time that Mork and Mindy dipped into Star Trek's costume collection for their alien-themed episodes. During the first season episode called Mork Goes Public, Mindy's father, Fred McConnell, wore a spaceman costume that was actually assembled from pieces taken from two completely different Star Trek episodes. The helmet came from one episode while the suit came from another, creating a mix-and-match alien outfit that sharp-eyed Star Trek fans might have recognized. The costume recycling made perfect sense from a practical standpoint, since both shows were produced by Paramount Studios and shared the same wardrobe facilities. Rather than spending money to create entirely new alien costumes from scratch, the production team could simply raid the existing collection of science fiction outfits that were already sitting in storage. This approach allowed them to create convincing extraterrestrial looks without blowing their budget on elaborate costume design, which was especially important for a new show that was still proving itself to network executives and audiences. Fact 4. Scripts had blanks for Robin's improv. The writers of Mork and Mindy developed a completely unique approach to scripting that had never been used in television sitcoms before, creating what amounted to a hybrid between traditional scripted comedy and improvisational theater. Because Robin Williams was known for his explosive improvisational abilities from his stand-up comedy background, the writing team deliberately left gaps in their scripts, with simple notes that read, "Robin will do something here," giving Williams the creative freedom to fill in those moments with whatever spontaneous comedy came to mind during filming. This unusual scripting method was necessary because Williams had never worked on a traditional sitcom before, and his natural comedic instincts didn't always fit into the rigid structure of pre-written dialogue and carefully timed jokes. The scripts for Mork and Mindy were actually shorter than those used for other ABC sitcoms like Happy Days, specifically because the writers knew that Williams would expand many scenes with his own material, making the episodes longer and more unpredictable than anything else on television at the time. However, this creative freedom came with significant challenges that the production team hadn't fully anticipated when they first decided to accommodate Williams's improvisational style. Many of Williams' spontaneous ad-libs were simply too edgy, too adult-oriented, or too controversial for the general television audience that ABC was trying to reach with their family-friendly programming block. His natural comedic instincts, which had been developed performing in comedy clubs and on street corners for adult audiences, often produced material that was completely unsuitable for primetime broadcast television. To solve this problem, the writing team had to develop an elaborate system where they would create pre-written ad-libs that sounded spontaneous but were actually carefully crafted to fit network standards. A large team of writers would watch Williams's improvised performances and then create sanitized versions of his jokes that captured his energy and comedic timing, while removing any content that might offend viewers or create problems. With network censors, this meant that much of what audiences saw as Williams' natural improvisation was actually the result of a complex writing and editing process designed to make scripted material sound completely spontaneous. Fact 5. Robin stripped naked to make Pam laugh. Robin Williams had a very specific mission during the production of Mork Mindy that had nothing to do with delivering his lines or hitting his marks, and everything to do with catching his co-star Pam Dawber completely off guard whenever possible. According to producer Gary Marshall, Williams made it his personal goal in life to make Dawber blush, and he was willing to go to extreme lengths to accomplish this objective, including walking onto the set completely naked during filming. This wasn't just a one-time prank or an accidental wardrobe malfunction, but rather a deliberate and recurring strategy that Williams used throughout the show's production. He would wait for moments when Dawber was trying to concentrate on delivering her lines or getting into character, and then suddenly appear in the scene without any clothes on, creating an immediate distraction that would inevitably cause her to break character and start laughing or blushing exactly as he had intended. The timing of these naked appearances was particularly effective because Dawber was relatively new to television acting and was still learning how to maintain her composure during the often chaotic filming process of a sitcom. She had to focus intensely on remembering her dialogue, hitting her physical comedy marks, and reacting appropriately to Williams' unpredictable improvisational style, which made his surprise naked entrances even more shocking and disruptive to her concentration. Marshall later revealed that this behavior was not random or accidental, but was actually Williams's primary entertainment goal during the long days of filming. The producer explained that making Dawber blush had become Williams's main source of amusement on set, and he would plan these naked interruptions strategically to maximize their comedic impact on his co-star. Despite the unusual nature of this behind-the-scenes behavior, Dawber and Williams developed a strong professional relationship and genuine friendship that lasted long after the show ended. Years later, Dawber would refer to Williams affectionately as Sister Mary St. Patience because of how crazy and unpredictable those early television production days had been, acknowledging that his antics were part of his generous and playful spirit, rather than anything inappropriate or malicious. Fact 6. The baby was older than the parents. In one of television's most bizarre casting decisions, the 4th season of Mork Mindy introduced a baby character who was actually decades older than both of his supposed parents. When Mork and Mindy got married at the beginning of the final season, the writers decided to give them a child. But due to the alien biology they had established for Orkans throughout the series, this family addition created one of the strangest parent-child relationships ever seen on television. According to the show's mythology, Orkans don't reproduce the same way humans do, and they also don't age in the same direction as Earthlings. The writers had previously established that beings from the planet Ork age backward, getting younger as time passes instead of growing older like humans. This meant that when Mork became a father, he didn't experience a typical human pregnancy, but instead laid an egg that grew larger over time until it eventually hatched. When the egg finally opened, out came Mirth, played by 57-year-old comedian Jonathan Winters, who was one of Robin Williams' comedy heroes and had been brought onto the show specifically to help boost declining ratings. This casting choice meant that the newborn baby Mirth was actually older than his 27-year-old father Robin Williams and his 29-year-old mother Pam Dawber, creating a family dynamic that was completely upside down from anything viewers had ever seen before. The age difference became even more pronounced when considering Winters' extensive career in comedy, which had been established long before Williams had even started performing. Winters had been a professional comedian since the 1950s and was already a television veteran with decades of experience. while Williams was still relatively new to the entertainment industry and was appearing in his first major television role. This unusual family structure allowed the show to explore comedy situations that would have been impossible with a traditional baby character, since Mirth could speak, think, and interact like an adult, while still technically being the youngest member of the family. The writers used this backward aging concept to justify having philosophical conversations between the baby and his parents, with Mirth often displaying more wisdom and life experience than Mork and Mindy combined. Fact 7. Boulder, Colorado was a random choice. The decision to set Mork and Mindy in Boulder, Colorado had absolutely nothing to do with the story, the characters, or any creative vision for the show, but was instead the result of a completely random moment during the early planning stages of production. When producer Gary Marshall and his writing team were developing the concept for the spin-off series, they needed to choose a location where Mork would land on Earth and begin his mission to study human behavior, but they hadn't put much thought into where that should actually be. The original Happy Days episode that introduced Mork had been set in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was the main location for that series, but Marshall knew that the new show needed its own distinct setting that would be different from the 1950s nostalgia world of Happy Days. The writers were working on a show description that they would present to network executives, and they reached a point where they simply needed to write down some American city where an alien might reasonably choose to observe human culture. At that exact moment, Marshall happened to remember that he had a niece who was attending school in Colorado, and Boulder was literally the first place that popped into his mind when he needed to fill in that blank space in the show's concept. There was no research into whether Boulder would be an interesting or appropriate setting for a science fiction comedy. No consideration of what kinds of storylines might work well in a Colorado location, and no analysis of whether the city had any particular characteristics that would benefit the show's premise. This casual decision-making process meant that one of the most iconic television locations of the late 1970s was chosen with about as much thought as someone might put into deciding what to have for lunch. The choice turned out to work perfectly for the show's needs, since Boulder provided a more contemporary and relaxed setting than the Milwaukee of Happy Days, and the Colorado location helped establish that Mork and Mindy was taking place in the present day rather than in the past. The random nature of this decision becomes even more remarkable when considering how important the Boulder setting became to the show's identity, with the Colorado backdrop featuring prominently in the opening credits and becoming part of the series' visual signature that viewers would remember for decades. Fact 8. Nanu Nanu came from Star Trek. The most famous catchphrase in Mork and Mindy history wasn't an original creation by the show's writers, but was actually Robin Williams' tribute to one of his favorite science fiction television series. Mork's signature greeting of Nanu Nanu, along with the distinctive hand gesture that accompanied it, was directly inspired by Mr. Spock's iconic "Live Long and Prosper" Vulcan salute from Star Trek, a show that Williams had been a devoted fan of since its original run in the 1960s. Williams loved the logical alien perspective that Leonard Nimoy brought to the character of Spock, and he wanted to create something similar for Mork that would instantly establish the character as being from another world, while still feeling friendly and approachable to television audiences. The Vulcan salute involved raising the hand with the palm facing outward and separating the fingers into a distinctive V shape between the middle and ring fingers, creating a gesture that looked both alien and somehow peaceful at the same time. For Mork's version of this alien greeting, Williams combined elements of Spock's raised hand salute with a more traditional human handshake, creating a hybrid gesture that felt both extraterrestrial and welcoming. Instead of the formal "Live Long and Prosper" phrase that Spock used, Williams invented the more playful "Nanu Nanu" sound, which had a childlike, nonsensical quality that fit perfectly with Mork's innocent and curious personality. The timing of this creative borrowing made perfect sense, since Star Trek had ended its original television run in 1969. nearly a decade before Mork and Mindy premiered, but the series had gained a huge cult following through syndicated reruns that played constantly throughout the 1970s. This meant that many viewers would immediately recognize the Star Trek influence in Mork's greeting, creating an instant connection between the two science fiction shows that helped establish Mork as a legitimate alien character rather than just a comedian in a funny costume. The Nanu Nanu greeting became so popular that it swept across America like a cultural phenomenon, with everyone from children to grandparents copying both the phrase and the hand gesture, making it one of the most recognizable television catchphrases of the late 1970s. Fact 9. The show's worst enemy was its own network. While most television shows face competition from other networks and changing viewer tastes, Mork and Mindy's biggest threat came from an unexpected source: the very network that had created and promoted the series in the first place. ABC's programming decisions turned what should have been a long-running hit into a cautionary tale about how network interference can destroy even the most successful shows, leading frustrated fans to openly question the intelligence of the executives making these choices. During its first season in 1978 and 1979, Mork and Mindy was a massive ratings success, ranking third in the national Nielsen ratings behind only Laverne and Shirley and Three's Company, both of which were also ABC shows. The series had found the perfect home in its Thursday night time slot, where it was surrounded by other popular ABC comedies and benefited from a strong lead-in audience that was already tuned in to the network for their evening entertainment. However, ABC executives decided that instead of leaving their hit show in its successful time slot, they would use it as a weapon in their ongoing ratings war with the other networks. The network moved Mork and Mindy from its comfortable Thursday night position to Sunday evenings, where it would be forced to compete directly against CBS's long-established news program, 60 Minutes, which had been dominating Sunday night television for years with its investigative journalism and hard-hitting interviews. This scheduling decision was part of a strategy called counter-programming, where networks deliberately place their shows opposite successful programs on competing channels in hopes of stealing viewers away from the competition. Unfortunately for Mork and Mindy, this strategy backfired spectacularly, as the show's lighthearted alien comedy was completely overwhelmed by the serious, adult-oriented news programming that most Sunday night viewers preferred to watch. The results were devastating for the series, with ratings plummeting from third place all the way down to 27th place in just one season. This dramatic decline prompted angry fans to write letters expressing their disbelief at ABC's programming choices, with one particularly frustrated viewer writing that ABC must have hired very many idiots, or maybe just one stupid idiot, to be in charge of programming. Fact 10. Jonathan Winters played two different characters. Comedy legend Jonathan Winters appeared on Mork and Mindy in what has to be one of the most confusing casting decisions in television history, playing two completely different characters in consecutive seasons, without any acknowledgement or explanation from the show's writers. This unusual situation created a bizarre continuity problem that left viewers wondering if they were supposed to pretend they had never seen Winters on the show before, or if there was some complicated family relationship that the writers simply forgot to explain. During the third season of Mork and Mindy, Winters made his first appearance on the series playing Dave McConnell, who was established as Mindy's uncle and the brother of her father, Fred. In this role, Winters portrayed a typically grumpy and miserly relative who created family drama and provided opportunities for comedy through his interactions with the main characters. The character appeared in an episode called Mork and the Family Reunion, where his presence was clearly established as part of Mindy's extended family tree. However, when the show returned for its fourth and final season, the writers decided they wanted to add Winters as a regular cast member to help boost the declining ratings with his well-known improvisational comedy skills. Instead of bringing back the Dave McConnell character or creating some logical connection between his previous appearance and his new role, The writers simply pretended that Winters had never appeared on the show before and introduced him as a completely different character named Mirth. This new character was supposed to be the son of Mork and Mindy, who had hatched from an egg due to the unusual reproductive biology of Orkans. The writers never addressed the obvious problem that the same actor was now playing what should have been Mindy's nephew-in-law, creating a family tree that made no logical sense if viewers were paying attention to the show's continuity. The decision to ignore Winters' previous appearance was likely made because the writers desperately wanted his comedy talents on the show full-time, and they probably assumed that viewers either wouldn't remember his earlier guest role or wouldn't care enough about continuity to question the casting choice. This approach reflected the chaotic nature of the show's final season, where many decisions seemed to be made without much consideration for the series' established history. Fact 11. Famous future stars made weird cameos. Long before they became household names in their own right, several future entertainment superstars appeared on Mork and Mindy in some of the strangest and most unexpected roles of their early careers. These guest appearances happened during the late 1970s and early 1980s, when these performers were still relatively unknown, working small television gigs while trying to build their careers in the entertainment industry. David Letterman, who would later become one of America's most famous late-night talk show hosts, made one of his earliest television appearances on the first season of Mork and Mindy, playing a character named Ellsworth in an episode called Mork Goes Irk. In this role, Letterman portrayed a scammy self-help guru who ran dubious personal improvement seminars, displaying the dry, sarcastic humor that would eventually make him famous on Late Night and The Late Show, though at the time he was just another struggling comedian looking for television work. Paul Reubens, who would later create the iconic Pee Wee Herman character and star in his own children's television show, appeared in the fourth season, episode Long Before We Met, playing a character named Dickie Nimitz. This role cast him as a would-be high school suitor from Mindy's past, showing up to compete for her romantic attention in a storyline that was completely different from the childlike, bow-tie-wearing persona he would later develop for his breakthrough comedy character. John Larroquette, who would go on to win multiple Emmy Awards for his role as the sarcastic prosecutor Dan Fielding on Night Court, made his Mork and Mindy appearance in the fourth season episode Alienation, playing an even more unusual character than his future television roles. Larroquette portrayed a utopian cult leader named Baba Hope, combining religious mysticism with comedy, in a performance that showcased his dramatic range long before he became known primarily for his courtroom comedy work. These early appearances demonstrate how Mork and Mindy served as a launching pad for comedic talent, giving future stars the opportunity to work alongside Robin Williams and gain valuable television experience while playing characters that were often completely different from the roles that would eventually make them famous. Fact 12. The original Mork actor quit before filming. Before Robin Williams ever sat upside down in that famous audition chair, the role of Mork had already been cast twice, with two different established actors, both of whom abandoned the project after getting a closer look at what they would actually be required to do on screen. The casting process for Mork's debut appearance on Happy Days turned into a comedy of errors that left producers scrambling to find someone willing to play an alien character in what many actors apparently considered a ridiculous and potentially career-damaging role. The first actor approached for the role was Dom DeLuise, a well-known comedian who had appeared in numerous Mel Brooks movies and was considered a safe choice for the quirky alien character. DeLuise was initially interested in the opportunity to appear on the popular Happy Days series, but when he received the script and saw exactly what the role would require him to do, he quickly changed his mind and withdrew from the project before any filming began. After DeLuise's departure, the producers turned to Roger Rees, a British actor who would later become famous for his role in the television series Cheers, as Rebecca's pretentious boyfriend Robin Colcord. Rees was cast in the role and seemed committed to the project. But like DeLuise before him, he had second thoughts, once he fully understood what playing Mork would actually involve in terms of the character's bizarre behavior and alien mannerisms. Both actors apparently came to the same conclusion, that the script was either too strange, too risky for their careers, or simply not worth their time and effort. Their rapid exits from the project left the Happy Days production team in a difficult position, since they needed to find a replacement actor quickly in order to stay on their filming schedule for what was supposed to be a simple one-episode guest appearance. This double-casting disaster ultimately turned out to be incredibly fortunate for television history, because it forced the producers to look beyond established actors and consider someone completely unknown, like Robin Williams, who was desperate enough for work and creative enough in his approach to embrace the weirdness that had scared away the more conventional performers who had been offered the role first. Fact 13. Robin Williams called his character Morko the pin-headed boy. While millions of viewers around the world fell in love with Mork's innocent charm and childlike wonder, the actor who brought the character to life had developed a much less affectionate relationship with his most famous role by the time the series reached its later seasons. Robin Williams, who had initially embraced the creative freedom that playing an alien character provided, gradually became frustrated with the limitations and repetitive nature of portraying what he privately began calling Morko, the pin-headed boy, a nickname that revealed his growing disdain for the character that had made him famous. This internal conflict between Williams and his signature role created significant tension during the production of the show's later episodes, particularly when it came to delivering the catchphrases and mannerisms that audiences expected from Mork. The Nanu Nanu greeting that had become synonymous with the character and had swept across America as a cultural phenomenon was something that Williams increasingly resented having to perform, viewing it as a simplistic and limiting aspect of his acting work that prevented him from exploring more complex comedic material. Directors and producers on the show began to notice that Williams was becoming reluctant to deliver the famous catchphrase with the same enthusiasm he had shown in earlier seasons, and they often had to work hard to convince him to include the Nanu Nanu moments that viewers were expecting to see. This resistance wasn't born out of any disrespect for the audience or the show's success, but rather from Williams's natural desire as a performer to grow and evolve beyond the constraints of playing the same naive character week after week. The nickname Morko, the pin-headed boy, reflected Williams's frustration with being typecast as a simple-minded alien, when he knew he was capable of much more sophisticated comedy and dramatic work. Even though Mork and Mindy had launched his career and provided him with financial security and national recognition, Williams was eager to move beyond the role and prove that he could succeed in other types of entertainment, including the film career that he was already beginning to pursue during the show's later seasons. Fact 14. The show had 95 episodes, but only 91 stories. One of the most confusing aspects of Mork and Mindy's production history involves a mathematical puzzle that has left television historians and fans scratching their heads for decades. The series officially produced 91 episodes during its four-season run from 1978 to 1982, but when the show was prepared for syndication, it was somehow transformed into 95 episodes, creating 4 extra installments that didn't exist during the original broadcast run. This numerical discrepancy wasn't the result of any secret episodes being filmed or any lost footage being discovered in a studio vault somewhere, but rather a deliberate business decision made by the syndication company that was preparing the show for reruns on local television stations across the country. When television shows are sold into syndication, distributors often prefer to have episode counts that work better for their scheduling needs, since local stations typically want to be able to run shows in neat weekly cycles without having awkward leftover episodes that don't fit their programming blocks. The process of turning 91 episodes into 95 episodes involved taking some of the longer original episodes and splitting them into multiple parts, creating artificial cliffhangers and episode breaks where none had existed during the original network broadcasts. This meant that storylines that had been presented as single, complete episodes during the show's original run on ABC were suddenly divided into 2 or even 3 separate episodes when they appeared in syndication, with new opening and closing credits added to create the illusion of additional content. This syndication restructuring created significant confusion for viewers who had watched the show during its original network run and then later encountered it in reruns, since the episode numbering and story structure were completely different from what they remembered seeing on ABC. Fans who tried to create complete episode guides or collect the series on home video often found themselves dealing with conflicting information about how many episodes actually existed and how the stories were supposed to be organized. The practice of splitting episodes for syndication was not uncommon in the television industry, but the extent to which it was applied to Mork and Mindy created one of the most dramatic examples of how business considerations could completely alter a show's legacy and confuse its devoted fan base. Fact 15. Season 5 would have been time travel with historical figures. The cancellation of Mork and Mindy after its 4th season prevented viewers from seeing what would have been one of the most dramatic format changes in television sitcom history, as the producers had already developed detailed plans to transform the struggling alien comedy into an educational time travel adventure series. Producer Brian Levant revealed in a 2015 interview that the proposed 5th season would have completely abandoned the Boulder, Colorado setting and contemporary storylines in favor of sending Mork and Mindy on journeys through American history to meet famous figures from the nation's past. This radical concept change was designed to address the show's declining ratings by creating what Levant described as a semi-educational show, combining the established comedy chemistry between Robin Williams and Pam Dawber with historical lessons that might appeal to parents and teachers who wanted their children to learn something while being entertained. The time travel format would have allowed the writers to place Mork's alien perspective into different historical periods, potentially creating comedy from his confusion about past customs and social norms, while also providing educational content about important moments in American history. The 4th season had ended with a cliffhanger that was specifically designed to set up this new time travel premise, leaving Mork and Mindy stranded in prehistoric times thanks to a pair of magic shoes that had the power to transport people through different eras. If the series had been renewed, these magical shoes would have become the vehicle for the couple's historical adventures, allowing them to visit different time periods and encounter legendary figures from the past. The producers were so confident in this new direction that they had already conducted a promotional photo shoot featuring Robin Williams and Pam Dawber, posed alongside actors portraying Abraham Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, creating publicity images that were intended to show potential viewers what the new format would look like. These photographs were meant to demonstrate how the show would blend comedy with education. By having Mork and Mindy interact with some of the most recognizable figures from American history, essentially creating what Levant later described as Mork and Mindy's Excellent Adventures, comparing the concept to the popular Bill and Ted movies that would come later.